So it's not stopping at the first moment of resistance. It's saying, what else is possible? How else could we work through this? And so that's really what I want to share with you today, was just a little bit of this inspiration around how sometimes it can be so easy to make these decisions. And I have to say, as we have moved forward with the conscious edge, it has absolutely evolved. It still has the same mission, the same, I still define conscious edge as the same way. However, one of the newer things that dropped in was the conscious edge is also a place. It's a place where modern science and ancient wisdom converge or meet. Hey, you leader, entrepreneur, business owner, solopreneur, whatever you call yourself, we know you're a visionary business builder, wealth seeker looking to combine a passion for doing good with leading consciously. It's time to shift from a traditional focus of pure wealth accumulation to one that integrates well-being and fulfillment. This is the Conscious Edge podcast, and I'm Alicia St. Germain, entrepreneur and coach. Along with my friend and wellness advocate, Jonathan Duggar, we're diving into what it means to embody radical self-acceptance while still evolving to lead with compassion and kindness. We're sharing our own experiences and expertise as we unpack imposter syndrome, perfectionism, procrastination, and all the other things that lead to burnout and keep you from experiencing pure joy, business growth, and maximum impact. This is a safe and supportive space to explore what it means to be a human creating wealth and building a business. You're here for a purpose, and it's time to shine your light. So here we go. So there are times in your life when things can feel really hard when you're in business and you're trying to get things figured out. You're trying to do it the right way. You're trying to put the pieces together, and it can just feel a little bit like you're trudging through mud. I'd almost describe it as. And then there are these other times when things feel so easy and the decisions come easily. You have this clear knowing. It's like this resolve that happens. And as you move forward, things just drop in place. And I have some thoughts about why that happens and what the difference is in those moments that I want to share with you today. So that's what we're going to get into. This is the Conscious Edge podcast. If you're new here, I'm your host, Alicia St. Germain, and typically I have with me our resident wellness advocate, Jonathan Duggar, but we just finished up the most amazing retreat in Phoenix, Arizona. We had 7 people join us in a beautiful home. Everybody had their own king bed, their own bathroom. We had this lovely open space where we could all convene and come together, yet plenty of place for people to go off and have some retreat from each other, and lots of different outdoor spaces for us to connect. It was the most wonderful experience. We are going to get into that more with you in future episodes. We're going to give ourselves a little chance to process everything that happened. There was so much expected results and unexpected results that came out of this time together with these individuals. And everyone took a lot away from the time that we spent together and the facilitation that we did. So we'll be unpacking that. Jonathan went on up to Sedona to spend some time recuperating and recharging there, and also attending to some other things that he is passionate about. And so we will take some time with you to share the nuggets and have some of our guests come on and share what they learned so that you can share. We want to be that ripple effect that goes out into the world and gives you those little nuggets that are supportive for you as you go out and build wealth and create a business and do it as a whole human. So if you are new here, please make sure you take a moment, hit that follow button. And if you've been with us for a long time, you know I love you. I say it every single week. We produce these podcasts every single week. So as we are in the retreat on the first day, we are sitting around. We decided to do part of it out in the beautiful 80-degree weather, which I so appreciated because it was like 10 where my family was back in Ohio. And so we're sitting out in this beautiful weather. And it was during a portion of the time at the retreat when we were really talking about our values, what's important to us, why we do what we do, and allowing ourselves to really move into a space of creativity. And so often entrepreneurs get locked into the doing of their business and just thinking it's all about, there's a sense of restriction and control, and I've got to do it and I've got to handle it all. And it's a very intense energy that can be exhausting and lead to so much overwhelm. And what Jonathan and I both know when we came up with the concept for this retreat is just really having the space, giving yourself the space to connect with something bigger than yourself, the creativity. One of my values is around understanding that I am connected to everything. It's the spirituality of being connected to you and something else in the tree, and everything is interconnected. And when we can tap into that, I know that magical things happen. Things I can't explain. I tell my clients all the time, look, there are things I can't explain. They work. And that's all I need. I don't need to have the evidence of why. I have the evidence when things work and things are in flow and things feel easy and wonderful and joyful. And it's for the good of humanity. Why do I need more evidence than that? So we were in this space of really opening up creativity. And I don't remember how this came up, but as soon as I said it, my podcast producer was on the trip with us, and she holds up on her notebook, like, that should be a podcast episode. And she points it at me as I have just shared this story. She goes, that should be a podcast episode, which interestingly flowed into an entire branding concept, marketing concept. Why, like, there was so much flowing in that particular moment and that magic in that circle that we were in. So it was really fascinating to even like step back and watch that unfold from the story that I'm about to tell you. So when I first started my business, well, it wasn't even when I first started, but it was like when I was like, okay, I'm going to put together a coaching business. There's something here. Entrepreneurs, real estate investors, they really are not spending enough time. It's not being talked about enough how important it is to do personal development work alongside of your tactics and strategies. And so I decided I was going to start the business. And you get into this point where you've got to name your business, right? And you start into like, okay, what's my brand going to be? What's my marketing going to look like? And I really have learned that your brand evolves. It stems from your values. We talked about this last week in the podcast episode. It stems from values. It stems from why you do things. If you follow any Simon Sinek, start with why. And so it is a process in developing your brand. And so part of that was coming up, though, with a business that for the coaching company. And so I distinctly remember it's so interesting because you will take, so hear me when I say this, you will take as much time as you give yourself to come up with something. You will take as much time as you give yourself to come up with something. So if you decide, if you're like, okay, this is the amount of time I have to make a decision and then I've got to move forward, you're going to move forward faster in your business than if you say to yourself, once I decide this name of my business, then I'll move forward. So there's a distinction there, right? Like I remember very clearly, I got my hair cut and I was driving from downtown Columbus up to where I live in the suburbs. It's about a 25-minute drive, 30 minutes in traffic or so. So 25 to 30 minutes. And I got in my car. It was late 2017, like fall of 2017. And I just said, all right, God, we've got a 30-minute drive and we are going to decide on the name of my business by the time I park this car in the garage. Versus if I had said, well, when I get the name of my business, then I'll go get it incorporated. Then I'll start advertising. I set a time limit. So it's not the information that comes first and then you move forward. It's setting those time frames for yourself for when you're going to figure it out. So that was a really important key piece. I think that is going to help you move forward in your business with any of your decision making faster, is really starting to make some decisions. I wasn't attached to whether or not I came up, whether the name was going to be right or whether someone else had the name or anything like that. It was just like, in this 30 minutes, we are going to be creative together and I'm going to feel my way through finding a name for my business. So I'm throwing out all kinds of words like, is it this? Is it this? Is it this? What happens? I was thinking about what happens when you do this kind of work. You have an edge. Is this, what are we doing? We're dealing with the unconscious. And so as I'm throwing out words, I'm feeling like, is this a yes? Okay. How do I feel about this word versus this word? And I can only describe it as like this give and take that I felt with something bigger than myself. I call it God. And as I was saying words, I would feel into, yep, that feels right. No, that doesn't feel right. Oh, that could be right. And all of a sudden, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes in, I come up with conscious edge. Conscious edge. Like it's that competitive edge that you get when you have such a full understanding of your emotions, like how you process things, what you believe to be true about the world and the way that you work in it. When you have that, all of those things that are usually unconscious, and you develop skills to move things that are living in your unconscious into your conscious mind, you really do get this competitive edge in the world because you show up aware of your emotions and knowing how to use them as a tool versus being reactive and emotionally reactive and knowing that you have these reactions and getting triggered. And then there are negative consequences that come sometimes from not being in control of your emotions and not having these awarenesses. So I'm like, it's conscious edge. And so I was like, okay, that's it. It's the conscious edge. So I got home and I looked to see if there was a business in that name, registered in that name. And there was one in my state, but it was no longer active. It was like someone registered it and then they closed the business. So I found out who that was. I emailed them. I looked at consciousedge.com and I could tell the website was owned by someone, but it was not used by someone. And so through this whole time, I was like, that's okay. It doesn't matter if the website is already in use. I can figure that piece out. We can do something different. It's not a big deal, but also it's not in use. So I'm going to hold the possibility that maybe I could even buy that website, Conscious Edge. So I ended up emailing the woman who originally had the business registered here in the state of Ohio to see if she knew. She didn't. But regardless, I moved forward with getting my registration done, getting the business registered in my state. And so in my mind, many people could have said, oh, that's not the perfect name because the URL is not available, or thinking that there are maybe some reasons that wouldn't work for them. I was like, nope, we're going to register it. I'm very clear. This was the name. It was given to me. And that really aligns too with some of the work that I do that's more on the spiritual side with soul purpose readings, is the idea or the premise that God or your soul gives your parents your name, and in your name it creates a sound. And so those sounds create vibrations in the world that create some of your realities and the way things might play out, the way you feel, the personality. I don't know why it works that way. I just know that for all the readings that I have done on soul purpose readings, that we have really incredible conversations with people, and it's very supportive and clarifying for them. So I know that names have so much power, and I truly feel this was given to me divinely to support this mission that I am on. And so as I've gone through, I've registered the name now, and I ended up finding the person who had the URL by going through social media channels, and they had set everything up with the intention to do this thing and then never did anything with it. So I emailed him and I said, hey, listen, this is going to sound like a crazy story, but let me tell you, I was in my car having a conversation with God, naming this business. Here's my mission. Here's what I'm up to. And this name was given to me. I know that you have consciousedge.com registered. You own it. I would really like to buy it from you. Is that something you'd be willing to do? And he came back right away and he was like, this is an amazing story. I love this. I had this idea for it. I never did anything with it. This sounds completely aligned to what I wanted to happen with it. I will sell it to you for what I paid for it. So I literally ended up getting my URL, consciousedge.com, for what this gentleman had invested to get control of it, to have it. And we transferred it, and it was transferred over to me with like blessings and love and support. And it was easy. It was so incredibly easy. And I think about like how often people, they look at something and then they get discouraged. It's like, oh, it's not possible. And when you move into possibility, when you are in flow, and when you take those extra steps to say, what if it was possible for things to fall into line like I thought, or like I was hoping they would, how things move. The universe, I want to say, conspires to, and God conspires to support those things when you're on mission. And I can't tell you how many times when I feel so called to this, and when I'm in those moments of feeling discouraged, I will literally say, okay, God, I'm going to need a little bit of a push here. I need a little bit of support here to know that I'm on the right track. If this is what you want me to do, I really need you to just give me the next step. Sometimes I'm like, I need you to make it so clear for me that I really literally can't deny that this is what you want me to do. And so I've had those moments several times throughout this entire business. Anytime I've asked kind of divinely for support, it is always received. It always comes back. And whether that's coincidence or synchronicity or whatever you choose to call it, no matter if you follow a religion or you're spiritual, or even if you like don't subscribe to anything and you're like, you know what, that's just science. That's called synchronicity. Great. It really does not matter to me what you call it. It is recognizing that when you put out there that you need support and it comes to you, that you take it, that you walk through that and you actually A, ask for it, and B, take the support when it comes, and don't question, well, that's not really real. I could very easily be like, well, that was just not real. Or I could have gotten discouraged, or I could have gone so many other ways. But what if I just accepted that this was kind of a big magic moment when it just worked out, and it was because this is what I'm supposed to do. Elizabeth Gilbert has a wonderful book called Big Magic, and she talks about how ideas float around. And I don't even think it's her concept. It's a concept she talks about in the book. And it's where ideas kind of float around in the world looking for someone, a human, to grab that idea and run with it. And so this idea that if you've ever experienced something where you had an idea, you didn't act on it, and then suddenly you see like someone else doing your idea and you're like, oh, I had that idea. I should have done that. Yes, you should have. It was your idea. It was wanting to be birthed. And when you didn't do anything with it, it just moved on to another soul, another human to be birthed out into the world. So when you get these hits, when you get these things that are really exciting to you and you know and believe that this was given to you, you got to run fast with it, because if you don't, someone else will. And so just trusting your soul, trusting yourself, trusting God that it is happening for you, that it is moving forward for you. This is where the big magic happens. And I highly recommend you read that book if you haven't. It's really a beautiful book and a beautiful thoughts around how we let fear sometimes get in the way of letting these amazing things come out into the world. So I'm sitting there and I'm telling this story and they're all like, just, this is what flow is. And so I was like, really? This is a podcast? This is what people want to hear. And my podcast producer was like, yes, you've got to do this podcast immediately. And had I had time to sit down and do it right then and there in the retreat house, I had my podcast stuff with me, but we were so in the moment, I didn't have the opportunity to do that. But I think if I could take away anything, you could take anything away from this story. It's give yourself a time frame for decisions that need to be made. That's a really practical thing. And sometimes when you are operating from flow or spirituality or those types of things, I don't think people often put a time frame on things. They just think, well, if it feels right, if it doesn't feel right, I'll pivot. There's a lot of times I talk about when people get discouraged when they're creating and doing things in the world and it gets hard, they immediately go to, well, it didn't feel aligned. Did it not feel aligned? Or did you let your big assumptions, did you let your experience in life and your fears come take over and you just aren't used to sitting in the discomfort of being maybe a little bit scared or not trusting yourself and not feeling your way through those things as opposed to it didn't feel aligned. I think those are two different things. You know, if one of the things that someone had asked while we were at the retreat was like, how do you know when you're just trying to save like a sinking ship, I think was the context that we were talking about, where we were having a really full day we spent on money and our beliefs around money. And it's like spending money on a sinking ship. How do you know you're on a sinking ship? And I said, well, it's nuanced. We talked a lot about things being very nuanced. And there is the numbers and the practicality of it, which was awesome because we actually had my accountant was there as well on this retreat. So getting to have her practical brain, her accountant brain, look at some of these pieces and say, well, here's the practical side of it. However, there's also the other side of like, does it bring you joy? Maybe is there another potential to tweak something that may actually help? Or is it keeping you up at night? Like if it's at a point where you're no longer finding any joy in what you're doing, it keeps you up at night, it is harmful, causing harm to you and your family. At that point, then there's probably some things that need to be changed. And it could be personal development work that needs to be done, or maybe you're not doing the right thing or not getting the right support. But I oftentimes think that people give up too soon as well. And they give up when it's uncomfortable, when it's hard, when it doesn't work immediately the way you think it should work. You're not patient enough. Those are all things that come up for people in their entrepreneurial journey that sometimes will cause you to quit, and you quit way too soon. And it's all because of expectations that we put on ourselves, all because of unmet expectations, I would say. So that's definitely one of those things is like set a time frame to make a decision and make the best decision that you have with the time you have available. So I gave myself the 30 minutes. We came up with a name. Then after I made the decision, I backed it up with information. Has someone already trademarked this? Has someone already registered a business with this? Is the website available? Okay, website's not available, but it's not in use. So how else could I maybe get this URL, just because that would be really nice for branding purposes, but not being attached Not saying, well, I can't do it if I can't have the website. There's always a way to work around it, right? And so all of those things, all of that was available, and we worked our way through it. So it's not stopping at the first moment of resistance. It's saying, what else is possible? How else could we work through this? And so that's really what I want to share with you today, was just a little bit of this inspiration around how sometimes it can be so easy to make these decisions. And I have to say, as we have moved forward with the conscious edge, it has absolutely evolved. It still has the same mission, the same, I still define conscious edge as the same way. However, one of the newer things that dropped in was the conscious edge is also a place. It's a place where modern science and ancient wisdom converge or meet, because we do use both these ancient wisdom practices like mindfulness and spirituality and some of those more ancient things with cutting edge science and like the methodology and coaching that we use. There is space for all of it in the conscious edge, is how I see it. There is not one right way to do things. There is so much overlap between coaching methodologies. There's advancement in science. There is overlap in the way that science and wisdom and things that seem less tangible, those things kind of overlap so much more. But the human mind loves tangible evidence. They love evidentiary support. And so that's why I think sometimes with the spirituality side of things, because it can be so much less tangible and so much less studied, that is one of the things that I'm really curious to learn more about. Is there's really room for all of it. So whatever you believe, I think whatever works for you to keep you moving in a positive direction, serving humanity, being mindful, increasing your self-awareness, and doing good in the world. How could any of that be bad when you have the mind and the intention of helping others? And are you going to mess up and make mistakes along the way? Are you going to get it right every time? Is it going to evolve? Absolutely. I think this idea of having to get it all right before you move forward is a travesty, because having to get it all right before you move forward, it won't happen. It will, that idea that whatever it is you're working on, it will move on to someone else. It is the same thing that happens when you overthink making an offer to a potential client or someone you want to do business with. All of that overthinking kills the opportunities that you get to take. So with all of that being said, I hope that you found today maybe a little insightful into the history of the conscious edge, where it came from, maybe some of the lessons that you could take away from it, that you too have these abilities to create from this easy place. Your business can move forward so easily. The retreat, when I think about how this retreat, how fun and easy, from conception to podcast to building out the retreat to the logistics to actually seeing it come into fruition and seeing all of the magic that was created and connection between these humans that came together to do good in the world and work on themselves. My gosh, like it was so easy and fun and enjoyable. And it really was, there were hard moments. There were things that didn't work quite like we thought. And we'll talk about those in future episodes. And so incredibly fulfilling. And that when I look at the overview, the journey from 2017 to now, 2025, the most incredible things that I have taken from that journey, and all of them so positive, so touched by something bigger than myself. That's all I can say. It's just like, it's bigger than me. And when you operate in that place where you see what you do in the world and your business from a place that is bigger than you, it aligns with your values. It comes from a place of service to others, and you do it for a really good reason that's close to your heart. It is so incredibly fulfilling. So if you don't have that in your life, I really invite you to reach out to me, and we can hop on a call. I'm happy to hop on a call, and we can talk you through what your vision is, what might be getting in the way. I'm very good at helping people come through and see what big assumptions might you be making that are making your journey so much harder for yourself, and making it maybe so that you are feeling a little bit like you're headed for burnout or overwhelm. And you could just be, it's not someone said at the retreat, like they felt like they needed to scrap like their whole thing they've been working on for so long. And I said, you don't need to scrap the whole thing. You're on the right track. It's a couple of tweaks. So often business owners are just a couple of tweaks from success. And it's the keep scrapping things and starting over that actually gets people down so much more. So I invite you, reach out to me, email me, let's hop on a call. Let's go through what your vision is, what big assumptions you might be making. And I will tell you how what I do can support you, or if it can support you, to make it so that you are operating in a place that is so much more joyful and fulfilling, and you're getting better results, and it feels so much more aligned with who you are and what you want in the world. So with all of that being said, sending you so much love. And if Jonathan were here, he would say, be well. Thanks for listening to the Conscious Edge podcast. Make sure you subscribe and take a moment to be kind and share this episode with someone you care about. Leave a review to help us bring more compassionate leaders building businesses and creating wealth to the table. And for show notes, head over to consciousedge.com/podcast. This podcast and the linked materials are presented solely for general information, educational, and entertainment purposes, and should not be taken as personal or medical advice or any kind of mental health treatment. Please consult a medical or mental health professional if you feel you need such services. Please be advised that all investing and entrepreneurial endeavors involve risk, and the use of the education and information on this podcast and linked materials is at the user's own risk.